2 hours before we were supposed to leave, my son texted me 9 words. "Mom, we decided this one should be just us." I was standing in my own driveway when it came in my slippers, next to a cooler I had packed at midnight with 12 green chile burritos wrapped in foil. I had paid for that trip 11 months earlier, $4,160. One check, my handwriting, the cabin and the train tickets, and the deposit on the bunk beds, because my grandson wanted to ride the narrow gauge up to Silverton for his 7th birthday. I called my son. He picked up on the 4th ring, which is the ring people pick up on when they were hoping it would stop. "You already loaded the car," I said. "Mom, that's not a question, Dominic. I can hear the tailgate." Then there was a shuffle, the sound of a phone changing hands, and my daughter-in-law came on the line. Her voice was pleasant. That's what I keep coming back to, all these months later. It was pleasant. "Aggie," she said, "it's a family trip. You understand?" And I said, "Sure, honey. Drive safe. There's ice in the garage freezer if you want it." Then I hung up, because I have been hanging up before I cry since 1982, and I was not going to break that streak in a driveway at 10 minutes to 7 in the morning. Here is what none of the 3 of us knew, standing in that driveway. There was already a folder in a credit union office on Prairie Avenue, with my name printed on the tab, and inside that folder there was a date circled, Thursday the 26th. 19 days out, a day chosen very carefully by somebody who had counted on me being 4 hours away in a rented cabin with a porch, watching a 7-year-old eat a hot dog. But I'm getting ahead of myself, and I don't want to. I want to tell it the way it happened to me, one wrong thing at a time, because that's the only way you'll understand why a woman my age did what I did on the 24th. Before I go on, let me say hello to you, wherever you are, and whatever hour it is where you're sitting tonight. Some of you have been with me since the beginning, and some of you just found this channel an hour ago. And either way, I'm glad you're here. If this story gets a hold of you the way it got a hold of me, a like helps more than you'd think, and it puts this in front of somebody who needs to hear it. And do me a favor, down in the comments, tell me the smallest thing anybody ever did to you that you are still carrying. I read them. Not some of them. All of them. My name is Agnes Mondragon. Aggie, to everybody who ever sat in my chair, which after 38 years is most of the south side of Pueblo, Colorado. I cut hair. I started sweeping floors in a shop on Northern Avenue when I was 19 and pregnant, and the owner, a woman named Bev with a beehive she maintained like a lawn, let me sleep in the back room until my license came through. I bought that shop out of Bev's estate in 2013. 2 chairs, a dryer chair nobody ever sat in, a jar of barbicide on the counter I have never once let go cloudy, and my name in gold letters across the front window that a sign man from Cannon City charged me $400 for, and that I never got tired of seeing from the parking lot. My hands look like what I do. The first 2 fingers of my right hand have a stain in the nail beds that has not come out since the Clinton administration. The middle knuckle locks in cold weather, and I have to work it loose with my other thumb before I can hold a shear. And I smell like ammonia. Not to me, but my husband used to say he could tell what kind of day I'd had by how far into the kitchen he got before he could smell the perm solution. My husband was Salvador, Sal, 31 years at the mill, second shift most of it. A man who could not sit still through a movie, but could sit on a folding chair in a gravel parking lot for 4 hours, watching Dominic play American Legion ball. He died in March of 2009, in our driveway, about 11 feet from where I was standing when that text came in. He had gone out to move the truck before the street sweeper came. That's the whole story of it. He went out to move the truck. Dominic was 24. He had a girl he'd been seeing about a year, a dental office manager named Kirsten Rule, who came down from Sterling, up on the Eastern Plains, and who in those days still called me Mrs. Mondragon, and brought a store cake to every single thing. They married that October, 7 months after the funeral, in the parish hall with the folding tables, because Sal had already put down the deposit and nobody had the heart to eat it. And in the spring of 2010, I took my husband's life insurance and I bought them a house. Not a big one, 940 square feet on a corner lot off Cedar, swamp cooler on the roof, and a cottonwood in the back that drops enough fluff in June to make the yard look like it snowed. $91,000. I put down every dollar I had and financed the rest at the credit union on Prairie, and it closed in my name because my son was 25 years old with a service tech's wage and a repossession on his credit from a truck he never should have bought at 21. No bank in Pueblo County was handing him anything in 2010. That is not a criticism of my boy. That is a fact about the year. They moved in the week of the state fair. Kirsten cried in the front room and hugged me and said, "I have never lived any place that was ours." I remember that sentence exactly. I remember thinking, "Honey, it isn't," and then telling myself that was a small, ugly thought, and putting it away. They paid me $400 a month. The mortgage was $681. I covered the difference, and the taxes, and the insurance, for 15 years, and I never said a word about it. And neither did they, and in all that time, not one of us ever said the word owner out loud in the same room. That's a thing families do. We build a whole house on top of a sentence nobody is willing to say. That night, after they left for Durango, I ate one of those burritos cold, standing at the sink, out of the foil. I put the rest in the freezer. I hosed out the cooler and turned it upside down in the garage, the way Sal always did, so it wouldn't sour. Then I went into the back bedroom, the one I still call the sewing room, even though my eyes quit on me years ago, and I opened the bottom drawer of the desk where I keep the phone book nobody uses anymore. Underneath it was a blue folder. Warranty deed, Pueblo County. Recorded April of 2010. Grantee Agnes M. Mondragon, a widow. 15 years that folder had been in that drawer under a phone book, and I had never once opened it except to copy the legal description when the county changed my parcel number. I sat down on the floor with it in my lap. And I want to be honest with you, because later on people in this town told a version of this story where I was 3 moves ahead the whole time. I wasn't. I was a woman on a bedroom floor in a housecoat, 66 years old, uninvited to a trip she paid for, holding a piece of paper she didn't fully understand yet. I only knew one thing, and it was the first new thing I had known in 15 years. I was holding something, and 19 days from that night, in a conference room on Court Street, 4 people were going to find out exactly what. You don't get frozen out all at once. If it happened all at once, you'd fight it. It happens the way a knee goes. One morning you notice you're taking the stairs different, and you can't tell anybody the day it started. The first year they were in that house, I had a key. I used it maybe 4 times, and always to drop something off. A pan of enchiladas, a box of Sal's tools Dominic said he wanted. In the spring of 2011, the locks got changed because somebody tried the back door of the neighbor's place, and I didn't get a new key, and I didn't ask for one, because asking would have made it a thing, and I did not want to be the kind of mother-in-law who made things a thing. That's how it starts, not with cruelty, with me deciding, on my own, what I was not going to bring up. That same year, in the fall, Dominic sat at my kitchen table with a beer he wasn't drinking and asked me about the house. He was 26. He'd been at the Huffback outfit 3 years by then, and his credit had come back some, and he said, "Mom, we were thinking, maybe we could get it put in our names. Refinance it. Take it off your plate." And I said, "Not yet, mijo. I want you to hear how easy that came out." It wasn't a decision. It was the same voice I use in the shop when somebody's sister walks in without an appointment, and I've got a color processing. "Not yet, honey. Sit down. I'll get to you." I gave him reasons. The rate was better on my note than anything he'd get. The taxes were figured off the 2009 assessment, and they'd reassess on a transfer. He'd have to pay closing costs he didn't have. Every one of those reasons was true. I have thought about that a great deal since, and I want to be fair to the woman I was at that table. Every reason I gave him was true, but there was one more, underneath, and it was not true. It was just mine. If that house was in my name, then twice a year, At minimum, my son had to sit in my kitchen and go over papers with me. March, for the insurance renewal. December, for the tax notice. 2 afternoons a year I did not have to invent a reason for. He said okay. He drank about a third of that beer and went home. He asked again the next year, and the year after that. I said the same thing in different clothes. Let's wait and see what the mill does. Let's wait till Theo's out of daycare. Let's get through the winter. We'll look at it in the spring. There was one year I told him the credit union wouldn't allow it, which was not true. I'd never called and asked. I told my son a thing I had not checked, and he believed me, because why would he not? Meanwhile, my daughter-in-law was becoming somebody else, or maybe becoming who she'd been the whole time, and just getting comfortable enough to show it. Mrs. Mondragon turned into Aggie around 2012. Aggie turned into a name she said the way you'd say a coworker's. She was efficient. That's the honest word for Kirsten. She ran that dental office, and she ran her house, and she ran the calendar, and somewhere around the time Theo was born, in 2018, she started running me too. Not meanly, efficiently. Thanksgiving moved to her mother's people in Sterling every other year, and then every year, and the year it came back around to Pueblo, they went to a friend's place in Rye instead, and I found out from a photo. Theo's baptism got scheduled for a Saturday in April, which is my second busiest day of the week, in a town where women get their hair done before church, and when I said I could close at noon, she said, "Oh, we already put you down for 1 o'clock at the restaurant after." So I did his baptism from the second to last pew with wet hands, smelling like a shop. Birthdays, I got a text with a time. Never a question, always a time. Christmas Eve, they came at 4 and left at 5:40, and one year Kirsten kept her coat on the whole time, which is a thing I noticed and never mentioned to a living soul until right now. And the thing is, I still had a place. That's what makes it hard to explain to people who want a villain in the first 5 minutes. I had a place. I was the woman who took Theo Thursday afternoons from the time he was 2, because the sitter's hours ended at 3, and Kirsten's didn't. Every Thursday for 5 years, that boy sat in my dryer chair with a coloring book while I finished my 4 o'clock, and then we walked down to the King Soopers on Northern, and he picked a donut out of the case with the little tissue paper, and we ate them in the car with the windows down. I was useful. I want to say that carefully because it took me a long time to learn the difference between being loved and being scheduled. There were nice things too. Kirsten drove me to my colonoscopy in 2021 and sat in the parking lot for 2 hours and brought me a Shasta afterward because I said the anesthetic left a taste. When my sister passed in Trinidad, she cleaned my whole house before the family came. She is not a monster. I have never once been able to say that woman is a monster, and believe me, there were nights I tried. The last time Dominic asked me about the deed was the summer Theo turned 5. 2023. We were in my backyard, and the cottonwood was going, and there was fluff in his beer, and he said it different that time. He didn't say refinance. He said, "Mom, it'd be nice to have something with our name on it." And I said, "Not yet." That was number 8. I did not know it was number 8. I did not know anybody was counting. But somebody was, and she was standing at the sliding door with a dish towel, and she heard it, and I saw her go back inside, and I thought nothing of it at all. Monday I opened the shop at 8 like always. I had told 4 different women the week before that I'd be gone Thursday through Sunday, so the first thing that happened, before I even got the towels folded, was Dolly Krantz coming through the door with her thermos and stopping dead in the middle of the floor. Dolly rents my second chair, has for 19 years. She is 58, twice divorced, and she has the gift of asking exactly one question and then shutting up. "You're here," she said. "I'm here." She hung up her purse. Okay, that's it. That's the whole conversation, and I have loved that woman for 19 years. By 10 o'clock, of course, it was around. This is Pueblo. My 9:30 was Rosalie Baca, who has known me since our boys were in Little League, and who cannot help herself, and she waited until I had her sectioned off and foiled before she said, "Into the mirror, I thought you'd be on a train. Change of plans. She let it sit exactly one beat too long. Their plans or your plans? I turned her chair a little, so I could get the back, which is a thing you learn to do in this trade, when you want a conversation to end. She let it go, but I watched her tell the woman under the dryer with her eyebrows, the way women do, and by the time I flipped the sign at 5, half the South Side knew that Aggie Mondragon had packed a cooler for a trip she didn't go on. The pictures started that afternoon. Kirsten posts, she always has, and I am on there, because Theo is on there, and I am not too proud to admit, I check it more than I should. There was the train. There was Theo in a paper conductor's hat with his mouth open. There was a picture from the porch of the cabin I paid for, the mountains going purple behind them, and she'd written something under it about how you have to protect your little family and make memories while they're small. 22 people liked it. 2 of them were my clients. I want to tell you I turned the phone off. I looked at it in the parking lot with the engine running and the air conditioning going, and I looked at that porch, and I thought about the bunk beds, and then I drove home the long way, along the levee, because the river was up and I wanted something to look at that had nothing to do with any of them. Wednesday night, Theo called me on the video. His face was too close to the screen, the way 7-year-olds hold a phone, all forehead and one nostril. He'd been in the river, and his hair was still wet and standing up in the back, and I could see the cabin ceiling behind him. Grandma, we went on the train, and it was so loud and there was a tunnel, and I got a rock. You got a rock. It's a real rock from the mountain. It's got a shiny part. I'm gonna give it to you. I'll put it on the shelf by the register, I said. Right where everybody can see it. He nodded very seriously, the way he does. Then he said, Grandma, how come you had to work? The air conditioner in my front room clicked on. I remember that, because I remember the sound of it more than I remember what I said. Is that what your mom told you, baby? She said Grandma has to work so she can't come. And I sat there on my own couch, with my grandson's wet head filling up my phone, and I understood something that had not gotten all the way through to me yet. It wasn't just that they left me home. Somebody had gone to the trouble of giving him a reason. Somebody had thought about it, and picked one, and made it a nice one that made me sound busy instead of unwanted. You don't do that on the way out the door. You do that ahead of time. That's right, honey, I told him. Grandma had to work. I have said a lot of things in my life I'd like back. That one I'd keep. He was 7. There was a rock with a shiny part in it. That was not the day. After we hung up, I sat there a long while. Then I got up and went to the sewing room and took that blue folder out from under the phone book. And this time I didn't sit on the floor with it. I put it on the kitchen table, under the good light, and I read every page of it, front to back, for the first time in 15 years. And there was one thing in there I had forgotten about entirely. It was the funeral bill. Folded in thirds at the back of the folder, behind the title insurance, on that thin paper funeral homes used to use. Milliken and Sons, March of 2009. Casket, opening and closing, the register book nobody signed right, the hearse. $6,890. And on the back of it, in my own handwriting, in pencil, a column of numbers. I had sat at that same table 16 years ago and subtracted the funeral from the death benefit, and then subtracted a set of tires and the last of the hospital bill from Parkview, and at the bottom of that column I'd written the number that was left, and then, underneath it, I'd written one word. House. I don't remember writing it. I remember almost nothing about that spring, but there it was in my own hand, a widow at a kitchen table in the 3rd week, doing arithmetic, deciding what her husband would be turned into. That's what that house is. People hear a story like mine and they think, well, it's property, it's an investment, she'll be fine. That house is 31 years of second shift at the mill and a man kneeling down beside a truck in his own driveway. Every dollar of it came out of Sal dying. I never told my son that in so many words, because what would he do with it? But I want you to know it, because you're going to hear what I did later, and I need you to understand what I was standing on. I put the bill back. I put the folder in the drawer. And then I did what I always do when I don't know what to do, which is go to work. Friday morning I had Junie Alderton in my chair at 9. Junie is 81 and lives 2 blocks off Cedar, and Junie sits at her front window with a police scanner and a pair of binoculars she will tell you are for birds. She's talking about her hip. Then out of nowhere, in the middle of the hip, she says, "Are they selling that house?" I kept combing. "Which house, hun?" "Your Dominic's. There was a fella out there in May with a clipboard, walking the lot line. Took pictures of the roof and the swamp cooler. Went inside about 40 minutes. Kirsten was home. She had the door propped." "May," I said. "Right around the fairgrounds thing. Middle of the month." The middle of May I was in Denver for 3 days, at the show at the convention center, the one I go to every year for the color classes and the free scissors sharpening. It's the only time all year I close on a weekday. Everybody who knows me knows it. It's on the sign on my door. "Probably the insurance," I said. "They do those inspections now." Said Junie, and told me about her hip. Here's the thing about being 66. You've been alive long enough to know exactly what a man with a clipboard walking a lot line is. I knew what it was standing right there with a comb in my hand. I just took that knowledge and set it on a high shelf, the way you set down a hot pan, and went on with my day, and my 4 o'clock, and my Saturday, and my Sunday morning coffee, because the other thing you learn by 66 is that once you take a thing off the shelf and look at it, you can't put it back up there. Sunday afternoon they came home. I know they came home because Kirsten posted a picture of the dog at 3:15, not a call. Dominic had said in the text, "I'll call you Sunday." I gave it until 7. I made myself eat first. I sat on the edge of my bed with the phone in both hands, like a woman about to ask a bank for something, in her own house, at 66 years old. I want to be honest about what I was going to say, because I've had a lot of time to think about who I was that evening. I was not going to bring up the trip. I had decided that in the shop on Friday. I wasn't going to say a word about the cooler or the $4,000 or the little paper conductor's hat. I was going to ask about Theo's rock, and I was going to ask if they wanted me Thursday like normal, and then, at the very end, easy, the way you mention weather, I was going to ask who the fella with the clipboard was. That's all. One question, sideways, at the end of a nice call. I have wondered since, what would have happened if she'd hung up properly? If I'd have asked it? If I'd have let her tell me it was the insurance, and said, "Oh, okay," and gone to bed, and signed whatever came across my table in June, the way I'd signed everything for 15 years. I dialed my son's number. It rang twice, and there was a fumble, and somebody's thumb, and then a woman's voice, not to me, half a room away. "Hang on, it's her." The line did not go dead. It went muffled, the way a phone does when it goes face down on a countertop with the speaker against the tile. And I could hear everything. I want to say right here that I know what a decent woman does. A decent woman says hello. "Hello, Kirsten. I think you sat on your phone," and hangs up. I have replayed that. I had about 4 seconds to be a decent woman, and I spent them holding my breath. She was talking to her sister, Bryn, up in Sterling. I know because she said the name twice in the first minute, and because Bryn is the only person alive Kirsten talks to in that voice, fast and flat with the manners off. It ran 11 minutes and 9 seconds. I know that too, because when it finally ended I was still holding the phone out in front of me like a plate, and the screen was still lit, and I looked at the number. I'm going to tell you what I heard the way I heard it, in pieces, because that's how it came. "No, he's in the shower, hang on. Water running somewhere, a cupboard." It came back at 296.5, which is more than Marty thought, so that's good. A pause where the sister said something. "Because it's a cash out, you can only pull what the equity supports. Marty ran it 3 ways. We can take out 62 and change, and still be under, and that's the down on Blue Sage plus the fence, plus the other thing, so." Then the sound of a chair. "No, she has to sign. That's the whole, Bryn, that's the whole thing. That's why it's taken since April. She's on the deed, not on the loan, on the deed, which means the note is hers, and she has to be at the table, and she has to sign the whole packet. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, with my slippers on the floor, and my feet flat and cold on the boards. She'll sign. She signs whatever Dom puts in front of her. She signs the insurance. She signs the tax thing. She's been signing since 2010. That's not the problem. Something clinked. Ice, I think. The problem is, if she has time to think about it. The problem is, if she asks him one question in front of anybody. Because you know what he does. He starts explaining, and then he says something like, well, Mom, it's technically your house, and then it's a family meeting, and then it's not happening again for 2 years. Then she said, 10 a.m. on the 26th. It's booked. Marty locked us Tuesday, and we've got to close inside 30 days or we lose the rate. And I am not, no, we're not going through this again. The sister talked a while. I stood up at some point. I don't know why. I stood up in my own bedroom in my housecoat, like there was somewhere in that house to go. Look, Kirsten said, I know how it sounds. I do. But 4 days, Bryn. 4 days in a cabin, the 3 of us and her. Theo would have told her about the appraiser guy by Tuesday. He tells her everything. He sits in that shop with her every Thursday. Or Dom has 2 beers on the porch and gets sentimental and tells her himself, and then we're back to not yet, and it's not yet for another 5 years. There it was, my own 2 words, in her mouth, said exactly the way I say them. So it's 4 days, she said. It's 4 days, and then it's done, and she never has to know it was anything except a trip. A long stretch where I could only hear the sister's voice buzzing like something in a jar. Then Kirsten said quieter, because it isn't hers, not really. Say what you want, it isn't. She keeps that deed in a drawer, like a leash. 15 years, Bryn. We put a roof on that house. I picked out the floor in that kitchen on my hands and knees. And on paper I'm nothing. On paper I'm nothing, and she's the owner, and my son is living in a house that could be gone in. She stopped. She actually stopped herself. I heard the stop. And then she said, she's not family to that house. She's a lien. I have been called things in my life. I got called worse than that in the 2nd grade. And I've had a woman in my own chair call me a name over a perm that took wrong in 1994. Nothing anybody has ever said to me landed like being called a lien by a woman who was standing in a kitchen I bought, drinking out of a glass I paid for, 4 days after she posted a picture of a porch I rented, with my grandson asleep down the hall in a bed I hauled up the stairs myself. Then, at the end, she said one more thing. She said it low. It wasn't for the sister. It was one of those things people say sideways to somebody who already knows the whole story. I'm not doing it again. 9 days, Bryn. I'm not doing it to him. And her sister said something short, and Kirsten said, yeah, I know, and there was a scrape, and the phone got picked up, and the sound of the room came up close and clean, and I could hear her breathing. I hung up before she got it to her ear. Then I sat down on the floor between the bed and the closet, which is not a place I have ever sat in the 22 years I've lived in that house, and I stayed there a while. Here's what I want you to understand about those 11 minutes. Almost none of it was about money. That is the part people get wrong when I tell it. She never once said what the $62,000 was really for. She said the down payment and the fence and the other thing, and I didn't know what the other thing was, and I would not find out for 19 more days. What she said, over and over, in 6 different ways, was this. Don't let her in the room. Don't let her have time. Don't let her think. They didn't cut me from that trip because they didn't want me. They cut me from that trip because they needed my hand and they were afraid of my head. My phone lit up again, about 2 minutes later. Dominic. It rang 4 times and stopped, and then a text came through. Hey Mom, sorry, missed you, long drive, call you tomorrow? I looked at that for a long time. My boy, 41 years old, sitting in a kitchen I bought, typing sorry, missed you. I did not answer it. Instead, I got up off that floor, and my knee cracked so loud I said something out loud to an empty room, and I went and got the phone book out of the drawer, and I looked up a name I had not called since Sal's estate. Pike, Wendell F., attorney at law, 2nd floor, 428 Court Street. His office opened at 9. I was on the stairs at 10 till. Wendell Pike is 74 and does wills, deeds, and the occasional fender bender. His office is up a flight of wooden stairs over what used to be a shoe store, and it smells like paper and hot dust from the window unit. He did my husband's estate in 2009, and he did not remember me. And then he looked at the file, and he did. He read the deed. He read it a second time. He took his glasses off. Agnes, this is about as simple as it gets. You are the sole owner in fee. The note is yours. They are, in the eyes of the county, occupants. They pay me $400 a month. Then they're tenants who are behind on market rent by about $900 a month for 15 years. But let's not go down that road. It won't make you happier. He put the glasses back on. Nobody refinances that property without you at the table with a pen. Nobody sells it. Nobody borrows $1 against it. Not your son, not his wife, not the credit union, not anybody. So if I don't show up on the 26th, then nothing happens. Rate lock expires, deal dies, and everybody's mad at you. He said that last part without any judgment in it at all, which I appreciated. There's one other thing. You said April. She said it's been going since April. He turned his chair to the computer and did some clicking, and then he asked if he could put a call in to the credit union, with me sitting right there, since I was the borrower, and it was my note, and I said go ahead. He was on hold 4 minutes. Then he was talking to a woman about a payoff statement, and he asked her the date of the request, and he wrote something on a legal pad and turned it around to me. April 11th. Payoff quote requested. Borrower authorization on file. Copy mailed to borrower of record. Borrower of record is me, my address. That letter came to my house. I want to tell you I marched down there and raised the roof. What actually happened is that I drove home in the middle of a Tuesday morning, and I went to the shelf by my door, where the mail goes when I get in with my hands full, and I dug through it, and about 11 envelopes down, between a hospital foundation asking for money and a mailer from a tire place, there it was. Credit union envelope, unopened, postmarked April 14th. I had carried that thing in from my own mailbox and set it down, and never looked at it, because I had not looked hard at a piece of paper about that house in 15 years. That is not something anybody did to me. That one is mine. I opened it standing up. Pay off good through May 30th. Principal balance, $26,418. $26,418. That's all that was left on Sal's house. 15 years of $681 a month, and it had come down to a number I could nearly see the bottom of. I drove back to Court Street. Wendell was eating a sandwich over the wastebasket and did not seem surprised to see me. They authorized it in my name, I said. Somebody with your account number and your date of birth and your mother's maiden name did, over the phone, in April. He wiped his hands. Agnes, before you ask me what your options are, I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to take your time with it, because the answer changes everything I put on paper. All right. What do you want? And I sat there in that hot little office, with my purse in my lap, and I could not answer him. I could tell you what I didn't want. I did not want them out on the street. I did not want my grandson in an apartment complex by the highway. I did not want to be the woman in the family story, the one they tell at Christmas 20 years from now. Oh, Grandma sold the house out from under them. You know she did. But what I wanted, in that chair, at 66, was a thing I did not have a single word for yet. Can I think about it? I said. Take a week. You've got till the 26th. He walked me to the top of the stairs, and then he said, for what it's worth, in 40-some years, I've had maybe 9 people sit in that chair, holding all the cards the way you are right now. You know what most of them do? What? Nothing, he said. They go home and they sign it anyway, because the alternative costs more than money. Thursday, Theo came like always. Kirsten dropped him at 3:40 and did not get out of the car. He came in with his backpack banging against the doorframe and a rock in his fist, and he put it on the counter by the register between the appointment book and the barbicide, and he said, "There, now everybody can see it. It's about the size of an egg, gray, with a seam of something glassy in it that catches when the door opens. It is still on that counter today." He sat in the dryer chair with his coloring book while I finished Marguerite Ontiveros, and at 4:30 we walked down to the King Soopers, and he took 12 minutes picking a donut, and we ate them in the car with the windows down and the heat coming off the parking lot. He talked about the tunnel on the train. He talked about a boy at the cabin who had a bigger rock. And then he said, "Mom says we might get a new house with stairs. Is that right? With stairs and a room for a dog. But not yet." He said it exactly the way I say it. He got it from her, and she got it from me. That's how a thing goes down through a family, 3 generations in 5 years, and nobody sees it move. Dominic came for him at 6. He stood in the doorway of my shop with his keys in his hand, the way he has since he was 19, and he said, "Mom, hey, listen, there's a little paperwork coming up on the house. Refinance thing, rates came down. Nothing big. I'll bring it by, or, actually, they might want you to come in and sign. It's like a 20-minute deal." "Okay," I said. 20 minutes, tops. I'll buy you lunch after." "Okay, mijo." And he smiled at me, relieved, the way he has smiled at me since he was 6 years old getting away with something, and he took my grandson home. That was the worst hour of the whole thing. Not the 11 minutes. That hour, in the shop, sweeping, after he left. Because up till then I could tell myself she was doing it, and he was being carried. And I had watched my son's face while he lied to me, and I had watched him be glad it went easy. Saturday I closed at 2, and Dolly and I sat in the shop with the fan going, and the sign flipped, and I told her all of it. Every bit. The cooler, the 11 minutes, the payoff letter I'd carried past my own mailbox and never opened. Dolly listened the whole way through without one interruption, which is her way, and at the end she said, "Can I say the mean thing? You're going to anyway." She's right about the leash. I stood up. I actually stood up, in my own shop, like I was going to walk out of a conversation with a woman who has cut hair 4 feet from me for 19 years. "Sit down, Ag." She didn't raise her voice. "She's wrong about everything else. She's wrong about you. She's wrong about that house. And she is a piece of work for doing it behind you. But she is right about the drawer. I was protecting them. From what?" And I opened my mouth, and nothing came out of it. "From what, honey?" she said again, gentler. "The boy's 41. He's had steady work 11 years. There's no creditor. There's no ex-wife. There's nothing coming. You want me to tell you what I've watched from that chair for 15 years. Every March that boy comes to your kitchen with the insurance renewal, and you make coffee, and that's the only time all spring he sits down in your house without his keys in his hand. And every year you know it, and every year you say not yet." I sat down. I did something that night I don't recommend to anybody. I went home and I sat down with a legal pad, and I wrote out every time I could remember him asking. I could put a year on 6 of them, and the other 2 I only knew by what was happening around them. 2011, at the table, with the beer. 2012, the mill rumor. 2014, after Kirsten's promotion. 2016, when the roof went on, and he paid for that roof himself, $5,900, on a house that wasn't his. 2018, when Theo was born. 2020, 2021, in the parking lot at Parkview after my procedure, which I had entirely forgotten until I made myself sit there and go year by year. And 2023, under the cottonwood, with the fluff in his beer. 8 times my son asked me for the thing that was already his in every way except the way that counts, and 8 times I said the same 2 words, and I never once, not one single time, Called the credit union to find out what it would actually take. Not yet. In 15 years I never got to yet. There is no yet, that's the trick of it. Yet is a room with no door in it, and I kept a grown man standing outside that door for 15 years, and told myself I was keeping him warm. But here's what stopped me from just calling Wendell Monday morning and telling him to draw up a transfer and be done with it. If I signed that packet on the 26th, $62,000 of Sal comes out of that house and goes onto a fence and a down payment and something called the other thing that nobody would say out loud in front of me. And then the deed goes to the two of them, and the woman who arranged for me to be 4 hours away so I couldn't ask a question controls the whole of it. Including who sees Theo, including Thursdays. And if I just handed it over free and clear, same thing, same woman, same control, and I'd have taught my son one more time that the way you get something out of your mother is to go around her. There had to be a third thing. I sat with that legal pad until 2 in the morning, and around 1:30 I stopped writing about the house entirely and started writing about money, my money, what I had and what I could get and how fast, and the number I needed was not a number I had. There was only one thing I owned that was worth anything at all. Monday morning I unlocked the shop at 10 till 8 and made the coffee and waited for Dolly to come through the door with her thermos, and when she did, I said, before she even got her purse hung up, "Dolly, if I put this place up, what would you give me for it?" Dolly did not say anything for a long time. She poured her coffee out of the thermos into the cup that is the lid of the thermos, and she blew on it, and then she said, "Are you asking me as a friend or as a woman with a checkbook?" "Both, I guess." "Then as a friend, don't do it." She took a sip. "And as a woman with a checkbook, 32 down and 500 a month for 5 years. And I want the building and the chairs and the good dryer, and you can have the rest." She'd had the number ready. That's the thing that got me. She'd had that number sitting in her head for I don't know how long, the way people do about the thing they want and would never ask for. $62,000, all in, spread over 5 years. About the same as what my daughter-in-law wanted to pull out of Sal's house. I owned that building outright. I bought it out of Bev's estate in 2013 for $39,500, cinder block, flat roof, a swamp cooler older than my grandson, and my name in gold letters on the glass. It was the only thing in this world that was 100% mine, and the credit union would lend against it in a week because it is the only kind of loan they like. Small and boring, with a building behind it. Wednesday I sat in Wendell Pike's hot little office and told him what I wanted, and it took me 11 minutes to get it out because I kept having to stop. Pay the note off. All of it. $26,418. Wired, gone. So there is no loan on that house at all. Then put the house in a trust. Not in my name, not in their names. In a trust for Theodore Salvador Mondragon, with Wendell as trustee, and not me, because if I was the trustee, I'd just be holding the leash in a nicer glove, and I knew it. The terms, and I said them out loud in that office before he wrote them down, and then I made him read them back. My son and his wife live in that house as long as they want it. No rent. Not $400. Not anything. And the $400 a month stops in June, which means I was handing back the only income I had besides my chair. Nobody borrows against it. Not them, not me, not a bank. It cannot be encumbered. Nobody sells it out from under anybody. Not them, and not me. That part mattered to me more than any of it, and you'll understand why in a little while. And on his 25th birthday, the whole thing goes to Theo, clean, in his name, and the day it does, every adult in this family has to find another reason to sit in a room with each other. Wendell put his pen down. You understand you're giving away roughly $270,000 of equity. I'm not giving it away, I'm putting it where nobody can spend it, including me. And you're selling your shop to do it. That's right. Agnes. He looked at me over the glasses. Why not just sign the refinance and let them have their fence? Because I've got one thing left to teach my son, I said, and I've only got one way left to say it. We closed on the shop that Friday afternoon at the credit union on Prairie, in a room with a plastic plant, and it took 19 minutes. Dolly signed. I signed. She slid a folder across, and I slid a ring of keys across, and that was 38 years. Saturday was my last day standing in a shop, with my name on the window. I did not tell one client. I want to be clear about that. I did 7 heads that day, the same as any Saturday. Rosalie at 9, Marguerite at 10:30, a girl getting a formal cut for a wedding in Rye, Junie at 1 with the hip. Junie told me about a rain gauge her nephew put in. I cut her hair and said, at the right places, and swept up after, and never said a word. At 6 I turned the sign and cleaned the shears and put fresh barbicide in the jar, which I did not have to do since it wasn't going to be my jar Monday. I did it anyway. Then I emptied the drawer under the register. There was a lot of nothing in there. Rubber bands. A church raffle ticket from 2019. 3 of Theo's drawings, one of which is a dinosaur in what I believe is a beauty shop, and Bev's cosmetology license from 1968, which I had left in that drawer for 12 years without ever once deciding to. The rock from the mountain I put in my purse. That was the only thing I took off that counter. I stood in the middle of the floor a while with the fan off, and it was so quiet I could hear the cooler on the roof ticking as it cooled down. 38 years, 19 of them beside Dolly. 6,000 some Saturdays. I got married out of that shop, and I buried a husband out of it, and I raised a boy in the back room of it, and I cried in the supply closet exactly twice. Both times in the 90s. And here's the thing, nobody tells you about the price of doing right by somebody. It isn't dramatic. You don't feel noble. I locked the door of a building I no longer owned and stood in the parking lot in the heat, and I thought, I could get in that car and go back inside and tell Dolly I changed my mind, and she'd tear the paper up tonight. I got in the car. I did not go back inside. Tuesday the 24th, at 11 in the morning, the wire cleared, and the note on Sal's house was paid in full, 15 years and 2 months after I signed it. At 2:11 that afternoon, Wendell walked the deed across to the clerk and recorder, and it was recorded, and he called me from the sidewalk and said, "It's stamped. 2:11, it's done." I was in my kitchen. I had nowhere to be. I had nowhere to be on a Tuesday for the first time since I was 19 years old. "Do you want me to call your son?" Wendell said. "No. Agnes, they're going to walk into that closing on Thursday with no idea." "I know it. You could save everybody a scene." "Wendell," I said, "for 15 years they have needed my hand and not my head. Thursday, they're going to get both, in front of witnesses, and I would like the witnesses." He was quiet a second. Then he said 10 o'clock, 4th floor, the title company on Court Street. "I'll be in my office 2 doors down if you need me." I hung up and stood there in my kitchen. Then I went and got out the blue dress, the one I wear to funerals and to the fair, and I hung it on the closet door where I'd see it when I woke up. I got to Court Street at 9:40 because I have never once in my life been late to anything, and I sat in the car in the shade of the parking structure for 15 minutes with the rock from the mountain in my hand. They came at 4 minutes to 10. Kirsten first, in her work clothes, phone in her hand, walking the way she walks when a thing is on a schedule. Then Dominic, half a step behind her, with a folder he did not need to be carrying. Kirsten saw me, and her whole face changed to the good one. "Aggie, you beat us here." "I did. You look nice." She said it warm. She meant it, is the awful part. "Is that new?" "It's about 11 years old, honey." The conference room was on the 4th floor, and it was cold enough that I was glad for the sleeves. Marty Delgado from the credit union was already in there, with 2 stacks of paper squared up in front of an empty chair, and the closer was a young woman named Priscilla, with a laptop and a notary stamp and a candy dish. They'd put a bottle of water at every place. They'd put a pen at every place. There were 4 pens, and one of them was mine, and I have thought about those 4 pens 100 times since. Everybody sat. Marty started talking. Rate, term, the appraisal came in strong. Folks, congratulations. Dominic laughed at something that wasn't funny. Kirsten had her phone face down on the table and both hands on top of it. Priscilla slid the stack in front of me and said, Mrs. Mondragon, we'll go top to bottom. I'll tell you what each one is. This first one is just your identification. And Dominic said, from across the table, 20 minutes, Mom, like I said. I put my hand flat on top of that stack. Not dramatic. I just put my hand on it. Before I sign anything, I said, I've got a question, and I'd like it answered here, where everybody can hear it. How much money is coming out of this house? Nobody said anything. The air handler came on. It's a rate thing, Aggie, Kirsten said. We're just… Marty. I turned to him. You're the one with the numbers. How much is the cash out? Marty Delgado looked at Kirsten and then at his own paper, because he is a man who works with the public and knows a room going bad when he's in one. 62,400, he said. I looked at my son. 15 years I have been able to read that boy's face from the far side of a gymnasium. He didn't look surprised, he looked caught. There is a difference, and every mother on this earth knows it. You knew, I said. Mom. And the fence, and the down payment on the place on Blue Sage, I said. And the other thing. What's the other thing, Kirsten? I have never in my life seen a person's color go out of them that fast. Because I hadn't gotten those words from a bank statement. I'd gotten them out of her own kitchen, in her own voice, and she knew the second she heard me say it exactly where I'd been standing when she said it, and I watched her put that together in about a second and a half. Where did you… Sunday the 8th. You set the phone down on the counter, and it stayed on for 11 minutes. Nobody moved. Priscilla the closer had gone very still with her hands off the keyboard, and Marty was looking at the table. Aggie, Kirsten said, and her voice had dropped into something flat and fast. You don't understand what this is. Then tell me. That's all I ever wanted, out of any of it. Somebody tell me a thing to my face. Dominic said, Mom, can we do this outside? No, mijo. We've done 15 years of this outside. I turned to Priscilla. Honey, I'm sorry to do this to you. Would you look up the vesting on that property? Today's date. She looked at Marty. Marty said, It was pulled Monday. Look it up today, I said. She typed. It took maybe 40 seconds, and in those 40 seconds, nobody at that table said one word. Then Priscilla said, There's a warranty deed recorded Tuesday at 2:11 p.m. A pause. And there's a release of deed of trust recorded the same day. The loan's paid off. Marty said, That's not. Hang on. He turned his laptop toward himself. It's vested in a trust. The Theodore S. Mondragon Trust. Kirsten said, What? There's nothing to refinance, Marty said, and he said it to the room, in the tone of a man watching 30 days of his own work go in the trash. There's no loan, and the trust holds title, so the borrower on this file doesn't own the property. I can't close this. This file's dead. Kirsten stood up so fast, the chair went back into the wall. I took the page out of my purse. I had written it out at my kitchen table Tuesday night, in pen, and I had rewritten it twice, and my handwriting is not what it was. This is what I did, I said, and you're going to hear all of it before anybody says anything to me. The note is paid, $26,418. It's gone. There's no mortgage on that house. There hasn't been since Tuesday morning. The house is in a trust for Theo. He gets it, clean and in his own name, on his 25th birthday. Until then you two live in it, and you don't pay me $1. The $400 a month stopped in June. It's not going up, and it's not coming back. Nobody borrows against that house, not the two of you, not me. Nobody can put a lien on it, and nobody can sell it, and that includes me, and that's on purpose. I made it so I couldn't do to you what you spent 4 days in a cabin making sure I couldn't do to you. If you want the place on Blue Sage with the stairs, buy it. On your own credit. Out of your own account, like every other couple in this town. You're 41 and 38, and you're good for it. Kirsten said, so we just wait. That's what this is. Sit tight and wait for you to. No, and I heard my own voice change, and so did everybody else in that room. That's the one thing this isn't. There is no waiting on me anymore. There's no asking me. There's no not yet, not ever again, from me to him, or from me to you. It's out of my hands. That's what I paid for. Do you understand what I'm telling you? I made it so I can never say no to you again. My son was crying. Silently, the way men his age do, sitting up straight and staring at a bottle of water. How, he said. Mom, that's $26,000. How did you? I put my purse strap over my shoulder. I sold the shop, I said. To Dolly. Friday. It's hers. And that was the sound I'll hear till I die, my 41-year-old boy making a noise into his hands in a room full of strangers. I did not stay for it. I want to be a woman who stayed for it. I got up and I walked out and got in the elevator, and I made it all the way across the lobby and out into the parking structure before I heard the door bang and heels coming fast on the concrete behind me. Agnes. She had come down 4 flights. She was breathing hard, and her makeup had gone, and she got between me and the car door, which nobody has done to me since Sal, and she said something I did not expect at all. Do you know what happens to a family when the house is in one person's name? Kirsten. Ask me, she said. Ask me how I know. 9 days, Agnes. I was 14 years old and we had 9 days. She told me the first part of it standing between me and my car door in a concrete parking structure on Court Street, in pieces, with her hands going. Sterling, Colorado. A house on the north side with a chain-link fence and a pump house her mother painted yellow. Her mother put 11 years and every dime of a grain elevator office wage into that house, and it was in a man's name, a second husband named Ron who did drywall, and when her mother finally put him out in the summer, Kirsten turned 14, he did the only thing there was to do to hurt her. He sold it, legally. It was his. She had no claim on one board of it. They got 9 days. 9 days to get 11 years out of a house, Kirsten said. You know what my mother did with the last 2 days? She scrubbed it. She scrubbed the oven out for people she'd never met. I asked her why, and she couldn't tell me. They stayed a while with her aunt in Fleming. Then the aunt's husband got laid off, and there were 6 weeks that summer where the 3 of them, her mother and Bryn and her, slept out in the back of a Cavalier at the edge of the fairgrounds, and her mother went to work every single morning in a blouse she ironed on the hood. Do you know what my mother says now? She says, well, we always knew whose house it was. Kirsten's voice cracked on that, and she got mad at it. She says it like it was the weather, like a name on a piece of paper is the weather. I said, come to my kitchen tonight, both of you, 7. They came at 10 after. That's the closest thing to an accident I've ever seen my daughter-in-law commit. I made coffee. Nobody drank it. We sat at the table Sal built out of a door in 1988, and I asked her the question I'd carried out of the closing room. What was the other thing? She didn't answer for a while. Dominic did. Her mom's place in Sterling, he said. It's a mobile home on a rented lot. She's 8 months behind on the lot rent, and there's a title loan against the home, and the outfit that owns the park has been posting people all spring. He looked at his hands. 11,200. That was the other thing. They can move a mobile home off a lot with a court paper and a truck, Kirsten said. In 9 days. Same as before. It is the exact same thing happening to the exact same woman twice in one lifetime, and I was not going to sit there and watch it. And there it was. $62,400. A fence, a down payment on a house with stairs for my grandson, and $11,200 to keep her mother off the road. She had done a low, sneaking thing. She had gone around me, and she had planned it in April, and she had put me out of a trip I paid for so I wouldn't be in a position to ask a question, and she had called me a lean standing in my own kitchen. And she had done it to keep a woman from sleeping in a car twice. I have thought about that every day since. Both things are true. That's the part nobody wants. Everybody wants the woman in the story to be one thing, so they know where to put her. Why not ask me? I said. Kirsten, look at me. $11,000 for your mother. Why in the name of God would you not ask me? And my son said, from the end of the table, because I told her not to. The refrigerator hummed. Outside somebody's sprinkler came on. I told her, don't ask my mother, ever, for anything about that house. He was looking straight at me, and he did not look away one time, and I will give him that for the rest of my life. Because I asked you 8 times, Mom. I know. No, you don't. You know you said no. You don't know what it is to be a grown man in your 40s and have to work up to asking your mother the same question for the 9th time. His voice went, 2011, 12, 14, when the roof went on, when Theo was born, in the parking lot at Parkview, and I felt like garbage for even bringing it up when you just had a procedure. But I did it anyway, because we were trying for a second baby and I wanted the house right. 2020, under the tree 2 summers ago, 8 times, and every time you said not yet, and every time I told her, it's fine, she'll come around, she just needs time. He wiped his face with the flat of his hand. And after the last one I told her, forget it. She'll never sign. Don't ask her. It'll only make it worse. Kirsten was crying now too, and not prettily, and she said the thing that took the last of it out of me. Do you know what it did to me, to hear him say that? A woman I don't get to argue with holds the roof over my son, and my husband tells me there's no point asking her, and I've already lived what happens next. She pushed the coffee away. So I found the only door that didn't need you to open it, and I'm not sorry I looked for it. I'm sorry it went through you. I sat there in my own kitchen, and I made myself say the true thing out loud, and it took me 2 tries. I kept that deed on purpose. Nobody said anything. Not for the reasons I gave. Those were all true, and they were all cover. I kept it because every March and every December my son had to sit in that chair you're sitting in, and go through papers with his mother, and it was the only 2 afternoons a year I could count on, and I knew it, and I did it anyway, for 15 years. I looked at my daughter-in-law. You said I kept it like a leash. I've had 4 weeks to find a better word than that one, and I can't. Kirsten didn't say it's okay. She didn't reach across the table. I want you to know that, because if this were a movie she would have, and she is not that woman, and I would not have believed her if she had. She said, it doesn't make what I did all right. No, I said, and it doesn't make what I did all right either. And here we sit. They left around 9:30. Dominic hugged me at the door. Too long, the way he did after the funeral. I got in my car and I drove down Northern Avenue, and I pulled into the lot of the shop and put it in park in my own spot, the one with the crack shaped like Idaho, and I sat there and looked through the glass at my name in gold letters on somebody else's building, with the security light on inside and the rock from the mountain gone off the counter because I'd taken it home in my purse. I sat there till about midnight. Then I went home. That was 9 months ago. Here's where everybody landed, since I know that's what you want. I work Wednesdays and Thursdays. I rent a chair from Dolly Krantz, which means I hand a woman $110 a week to stand in a spot I stood in for 38 years. And the first month of that was a taste in my mouth I couldn't get rid of. It's the second Wednesday that got me. The first one, everybody made a fuss. The second one I came in, and Dolly had already made the coffee, and I didn't know where she'd moved the towels. But she kept the name on the glass. I told her to change it, and she said, it costs $400 to change a window, and your name is the only reason half these women walk in here. So no. That's the whole conversation. 19 years. I get $500 a month from her for the next 4 years and a bit of Social Security. I don't have a mortgage on my own house, and I never did have one. I am not a poor woman. I am a woman with less than she had, which is a different thing, and at 67, I find I can carry it. They did not get the house on Blue Sage. There wasn't a way to. without the 62,000, and I didn't offer, and nobody asked. Dominic built the fence himself over 3 weekends in September, with a rented auger and a sunburn, and it is not straight, and Theo helped, and there is a handprint in the concrete of the corner post with a date scratched under it. Her mother's lot rent and the title loan got paid off in February. They did it themselves, the two of them, 400 and something a month out of their own account for 11 months, and Kirsten took a Saturday shift at a clinic in Pueblo West to do it. I know all of that because Dominic told me, not because she did. She and I are not close. I want to be straight with you about that, because I know how these stories usually go, and I've listened to enough of them to know that people want the part where the daughter-in-law comes to the door with a pie. There's no pie. What there is this. She calls me directly now instead of going through my son. She asks instead of telling. In January, she called me at 9 at night to ask whether Theo could stay over because she'd been called in, and I said of course, and she said thank you, Agnes. And then, after a pause, and I'm not asking as a favor to me, he wants to. That's about as warm as it gets between us, and I have decided that honest and cool beats sweet and false, which is a thing I did not believe at 40. Twice we've talked about Sterling, once at Thanksgiving in the driveway, and once in a parking lot at the King Supers. 25 minutes with the ice cream going soft in the cart. I know her mother's name now. It's Charlene. She was a grain elevator office manager for 26 years, and she can name every stop on the Union Pacific line between Sterling and Julesburg, and she came down for Theo's birthday in June, and I made the food, and she stood in my kitchen and admired my cabinets, and I thought, this is a woman who scrubbed an oven for people she'd never met. Theo still comes Thursdays. He's 8. He sits in the dryer chair with a book about volcanoes now, instead of a coloring book, and we still walk down for a donut, and he still takes 12 minutes to pick one. In 2043, when he's 25, a lawyer he's never met is going to hand him the deed to a 940-square-foot house on a corner lot off Cedar, and no adult in this family will have had one single thing to say about it. That is the best thing I have ever done with money. And 2 weeks ago my son came by on a Sunday with an envelope. He put it on the table Sal built and slid it over, and I opened it, and it was a printout. The Durango and Silverton, the narrow gauge, 4 tickets for the 2nd week of June. Cabin outside Bayfield, 3 nights, paid. There's 4, I said. There's 4. Mijo, this is. It's on my card, he said. It cleared. It's done, Mom. There's nothing for you to do about it. And I sat there with a piece of paper in my hand, for the 2nd time in a year, and it was such a different weight I almost couldn't hold on to it. I said yes. Right then, out loud, no waiting, no let me think about my Saturdays, no not yet. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's all healed. My hands still smell like ammonia 2 days a week instead of 6, and some Tuesdays I drive past my own name on a window and it catches me sideways. There's a woman in my family I will never be soft with, and she will never be soft with me, and we will both show up at everything for the next 30 years. That's the shape of it. That's what I've got. But last month Theo brought home a paper from school where they had to draw where they live, and he drew the house on Cedar with the crooked fence and the cottonwood, and off to the side, smaller, he drew a building with a stripe on it and a jar on the counter. He labeled that one Grandma's. He's got the spelling wrong, and the building isn't mine anymore, and I have not corrected him about either one. If this story got hold of you tonight, do me a favor and hit subscribe, because that's how these find the people who need them. And tell me down in the comments, honestly, who in your family has been standing outside a door, waiting on your yet, and what would it cost you to open it? Here's what it cost me, and I'll leave you with it. I always thought the mistake in my family was that they didn't respect me. It wasn't. They didn't respect me because I never once made them tell me the truth, and they never had to, because I'd made myself so easy to go around. I held the one thing they needed, and I called it love, and I let them come to my kitchen twice a year to ask permission for their own life. A house is boards and wire, and a roof my son paid for. You can put a name on it. You cannot put a family in it. And the day I finally gave up the last thing that was mine, and made it so nobody could ever come to me and ask for it again, was the first day in 15 years that my boy came to my door for no reason at all.